One thing that still kind of shocks me today is that people think that Bitcoin is untouchable. And what I mean by that is what most people think is that Bitcoin is just going to remain the number one cryptocurrency by market cap, and nothing's ever going to flip Bitcoin. Nothing will ever be as big as Bitcoin. And that's the overall thought process. And it has been like that for quite some time now, for well over a decade. And although this thought process is good to have if you are a Bitcoin maxi, in reality, when we think about what's happening right now around crypto, I do think now is probably one of the best times to actually focus on legitimate projects that are solving real world issues, because over time, we will witness, the evolution of crypto. And what I really mean by that is we will start to see the entire market dynamic change, and we will never need to actually rely on Bitcoin to be the first mover, because for every single cycle that we've had so far, we had to rely on Bitcoin to be the first mover to really kind of generate liquidity that would flow down into Ethereum and then into altcoins. And I do believe that that will change. And I think it all really kind of begins with regulations. Now, I want to go over a few things before we really get into, the full-on details of exactly why I believe that Bitcoin will be flipped. And, it could definitely be XRP. I actually think that XRP is at the top of the list for, one of the most prominent cryptocurrencies that could take that position. But let's actually first start off with the historical snapshot. Let's go back to January 7th of 2018, the time where XRP was trading at all-time highs. If we look at this, XRP had about roughly 100 billion, it's like 140 some billion dollars less than Bitcoin in terms of market cap. If we really think about this, it was so close to flipping Bitcoin. We already flipped Ethereum. We were trading at $130.8 billion of market cap compared to the $276.6 billion that Bitcoin had. Now, what's interesting about this, is the price that we have on January 7th. Because if we are thinking about this logically, there was 38.739 billion XRP in circulation, and we know that the recorded all-time high on CoinMarketCap is actually $3.84. That would be equivalent to almost a $150 billion market cap. So, like I said, the price here, if XRP doubled in value back in 2018, it would have flipped Bitcoin's market cap. That's how close we were to flipping Bitcoin. Now, again, this is back in 2018. And I want to stress that because back in 2018, we did not have the amount of ammunition that we have today for XRP. And what I mean by that is stablecoins. We see the entire ecosystem around XRP evolving and expanding. We have the EVM sidechain now live for XRP. We have 5+ stablecoins launching on XRP. We have tokenization happening on XRP. We also have legitimization of ROUSD with Ripple, and that definitely impacts the XRP ledger as well, and even XRP through just demand. Now, of course, most ROUSD is on Ethereum currently, but I do believe that that will change, especially with the introduction of the EVM sidechain. I think that that's going to generate a lot of movement between Ethereum and XRP. But outside of this, I bring all of this up because today we think about Bitcoin, and most people look at Bitcoin in this sort of like holy grail moment, which is, all right, well, Bitcoin is number one. It's going to remain number one. It's the largest cryptocurrency. It's the most successful one, and it's always going to be there. Bitcoin will always be a thing. Okay, I'm not saying that Bitcoin's going to die, but I do think that Bitcoin will lose the dominance that it has today. And I do believe that Bitcoin will also drop on the list. Now, when we think about this, we also heard this warning from Franklin Templeton, right? Jenny Johnson told us that, Bitcoin is a distraction away from the greatest disruption. And when we think about this, right, what she was really talking about was the technology that is behind some of these DLTs. And she also meant tokenization, stablecoins, and the use cases that all of these things actually unlock. But the crazy part about all of this is that she also realizes that this can't happen on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just too antiquated in terms of these other DLTs. And that's just the truth. And she knows this, and that's why she was telling us about this. Now, what's crazier about all of this is, like I said, with regulations, it opens up a whole completely different door. Here we actually have over here, Trump signs new stablecoin regulations into law, a major milestone for crypto industry. Then, of course, we also have clarity, right? The US House passed Clarity Act, advancing landmark crypto bill to the Senate. These two are the big ones to actually pay attention to. Now, Genius is already, signed into law. Clarity is to be expected by roughly the end of September into October. And Clarity is actually the full-on regulatory clarity bill for the entire crypto market. So what we really think about, crypto currently is that, all right, well, it's a market that's unregulated and it's really kind of driven by hype and speculation. With regulations, that kind of changes everything, right? Now we have the door opening up for institutions to really kind of flood in. We also have major banks diving on in. We have fintech companies diving on in. And this is only going to continue to accelerate from this point on. And what's crazy about all of this is I did say back in November of last year, because we already knew that 2024 was kind of the beginning of where we started to see institutional players taking crypto seriously, as well as asset management companies. But I said back in November that at some point in the future, projects like XRP and HBAR will be bigger than Bitcoin. Many will read that and laugh or say that it's impossible. Let me ask you this serious question. When this space's value is determined by utility, what utility does Bitcoin actually provide? For the longest time, we have heard the store of value narrative pushed. But what value does just holding something provide? When diminished returns become a reality and utility is the value driver, old age tech starts to become phased out. This is the future for Bitcoin, in my opinion, whether people agree with me or not. These projects that have extremely efficient tech and real world use cases already lined up will be the most valuable projects in this space. And even today, right, when we think about Ripple as a company, because again, XRP and Ripple are completely two different things. But Ripple chose to use XRP in the XRPL. In fact, most of the players behind Ripple actually created the XRP ledger, like David Schwartz, for an example. They were, a big part of the evolution of the XRP ledger. When we look at the leadership behind Ripple, okay, I don't care about, the names that are at Ripple. I'm focused on the board of directors. Okay, a lot of these names on the board of directors should tell you exactly how big Ripple is going to be. For an example, we look at the background behind some of these names. They are very prominent names from, for an example, like the SEC or Sandy O'Connor, for an example, who was, at JP Morgan, right? She retired as the Chief Regulatory Affairs Officer for JP Morgan Chase, where she set the regulatory strategy and led engagement with G20 policymakers. There, she previously held senior positions including Global Treasurer, Head of Prime Services, and was a member of the Executive Committee. She supported the integrity and efficiency of capital markets as chair of the Federal Reserve Board's Alternative Reference Rates Committee and as a former member of the Treasury Markets Practices Group sponsored by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. She now serves on a task force on financial stability and on the FDIC Systemic Resolution Advisory Committee. She's a director of Bank of New York Mellon Corporation and Terex Corporation as well. And now she's a board member for Ripple. And also Rosie Rios, right? She served as the 43rd Treasurer of the United States and was the CEO of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and the U.S. Mint. When we think about the names here, these are just a few names. But also recently, she was at Bitcoin 2025, the conference, talking about crypto, But then there's also another clip where she's talking about why she joined Ripple. Check this out.
You know, what 4 months make in terms of giving that green light for innovation to actually happen. You're going to hear me say a lot, the train has left the station. So, you know, thank you. Bitcoin is here to stay. Blockchain is here to stay. And, you know, the unfortunate part about government traditionally, it doesn't lead, it follows. And a lot of it is because you don't have a lot of the kind of the subject matter experts who are literally coming into government. And so that's why the fact that this administration has taken the lead to form these task forces to actually bring business and the expertise into those conversations, you know, we're literally playing catch up from the last 10 years where things didn't happen. Now things are happening. And the fact that there's now this momentum, that clarity is going to happen now for the very first time.
You know, crypto has been in the news time and time again, and I just want to share that I am on the board of Ripple. Ripple is XRP. And so when people ask me the question, why did you join the board of Ripple? I joined the board of Ripple because XRP serves a purpose. It's a function that facilitates cross-border payments. It's not some store of value, kind of arbitrary value that is not pegged to anything. This is actually what legitimate financial institutions use specifically for cross-border payments. So instead of days and dollars, it's seconds and cents. And that is the future, in my opinion.
And this is clear confirmation from Rosie Rios regarding the future for Ripple and even XRP and what's happening with blockchain and crypto. Obviously, yes, Bitcoin's going to remain, you know, a piece of crypto forever. I still think that we need to be focused on utility-based crypto projects. Now, also, Anderson put out a great post regarding even ROUSD and Rosie Rios. He said, now with what appears to be the imminent launch of ROUSD, let's consider a past addition to Ripple's board of directors. Rosie Rios, back in May of 2021, in the middle of Ripple's lawsuit with the SEC, she joined Ripple's board of directors. Now, this caused more than a few headlines because of the fact that she is the former 43rd treasurer of the United States that served under the Obama administration. Her signature is on the majority of US dollars circulating in the economy. Why would she join Ripple in the middle of a lawsuit with the US government? The fact that Ripple is now launching their own USD stablecoin makes you go, Now, another big name has joined Ripple's board of directors for ROUSD as well, and that's Sheila Bair, who has been named the second most powerful woman in the world twice by Forbes magazine. She joined Ripple's board of directors around the same time that Swell was held in October this year, where she participated. And yeah, these, like I said, are the names that are joining. Everything that has been aligned with some of these players joining as well, with even the SEC lawsuit, should have told us everything that we needed to know about what's coming and what's happening with Ripple. I've always said in the past that, you know, even if we look at, for example, the SEC lawsuit, a lot of this stuff is already planned ahead of time. Like, I do believe that the lawsuit was planned. I thought that it was always a big shakeout sort of, you know, plan to shake out as many weekends as possible, because we already knew that the lawsuit was nonsense. And also, I do think that it was a strategic play as well, because XRP was, at that time as well, you know, the third largest cryptocurrency by market cap. We already knew in the past that XRP flipped Ethereum, so it could have been a strategic play as well. But now that the market's opening up, and now that we're seeing XRP become a very successful crypto project, one of the largest crypto projects as well, it's outperforming Bitcoin, it's outperforming Ethereum, and we also see Ripple as a company expanding rapidly. I think that now is probably one of the best times to focus on what really matters here in terms of value and also even utility. But also, another big thing to focus on is this video here. Big shout to Subjective Views. I'm known for going out on a limb, so I'll say this. XRP will retire your bloodline. Sheila Warren was the previous CEO at Crypto Council for Innovation. In 2022, they filed an amicus curiae brief in support of Ripple and in opposition to the SEC's motion for summary judgment. Warren was also the head of data, blockchain, and digital assets at the World Economic Forum as well. And check this video out and what she has to say about Bitcoin and what's coming.
I think you're going to see more and more embedding of this entire ecosystem slowly over the course of time within traditional financial systems.
So what's the biggest takeaway then for those investors who might say, I'm not in it, I want to take part in terms of the gains, but I'm worried about all the volatility?
Well, I think there's going to be continued volatility in altcoins, right? And so sector by sector, we have sectors within crypto as well. With Bitcoin, it's about what you want your exposure to be. And anybody, I think you've seen this already, that's well established. With altcoins, Ethereum being the granddaddy altcoin, the question is going to be, what's your appetite for that kind of volatility? Over time, some altcoin will emerge as the Bitcoin, if you will, or...
Whoa! And this is where I feel like we are starting to see the real change happen, right? This is where we see the truth getting revealed about what some of these prominent names think is going to come in the future, which is an altcoin that has strong real world utility value tied to it that will flip Bitcoin and become the next Bitcoin, if you will.
And some altcoin will emerge as the Bitcoin, if you will, or of the stable coin of the pack. And it's a question of what your appetite is for that. But certainly, I think we're seeing a lot of folks who quietly, the way they were with Bitcoin, they were very quiet about it for a little while, and suddenly they were loud. You're seeing some of that happening in the markets with alts as well. And we should expect to continue to see that to happen. But it's all going to depend on your risk appetite, as it always should.
All right.
So yeah, when we think about what's really going on here, even now with stablecoin legislation, the market clarity legislation as well, 2025 seems as though it's going to be the year where almost everything changes around this market. And I do think that 2025 is also the year where we start to see the focus shift from Bitcoin to these other altcoins as well in a huge way. It's also crazy because when we think about Sheila Warren, if we go all the way back to September of 2020, she was also a keynote speaker at Ripple Swell 2020 as well. Like this is kind of crazy, right? So when we think about the connections here, when we think about what's happening, I do think that we need to be paying attention to Ripple, the connections between all of these players and Ripple, and follow the breadcrumbs that will lead us back to even XRP. I still believe today that XRP will be bigger than Bitcoin. I think a lot of these utility-based crypto projects will be bigger than Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin has been marketed for years to us. I think even today, it's still being marketed heavily to us. Some of the largest institutional players are still marketing Bitcoin, but some of them are actually telling us the truth about how Bitcoin is a distraction. When we read documents from the IMF, from the BIS, from some of these global organizations, they tell us that it's not Bitcoin. But digital assets will be the future, but it's not Bitcoin. We know the documents have told us about Stellar, about Ripple. I strongly believe that XRP is at the top of that list. And I do think that XRP will be bigger than Bitcoin. I do think that it will flip Bitcoin. And I think that now is probably one of the best times to not get distracted and actually stay focused on the target, which is utility-based crypto projects that have real world application potential and that are already working with some of the biggest players out there. XRP and the XRPL have been trialed by banks for years now, for well over a decade. If you don't see it now, I don't think that you ever will. And I'm being honest with you guys, because everything that we have witnessed over the last couple months is extremely bullish for these utility-based plays, especially XRP. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.